okay. It's okay.
Let me touch on a couple films because obviously this one is very dear to my heart. I know you're a brother in the Lord, and you appeared in God's Not Dead too. I'd like you to speak to that a little bit. I know there's another film coming out in Easter. We've been promoting the third one now in that franchise, but talk a little bit about that experience, the creators behind it, and what you thought that film really did.
Well, I was thrilled when Kevin Sorbo starred in the first God's Not Dead film, and I was already just ecstatic about the Heaven is for Real, about the little 4-year-old who died on the operating table with a burst appendix at 4 and was taken into heaven and given back and told his minister dad and things that he had seen that nobody ever told him. He'd never heard. There was no way the little kid could have seen and knew what he had come back knowing. And that film, was a very big success.
Sure.
And then other faith-based films, and then God's Not Dead, about the professor, the atheist, who assigned his class, and I don't know if it's in psychology or history or what the class was, maybe literature, give me 10 reasons, 10 proofs that there is no God. Well, the one student couldn't do it because he said, I talk to God every day. I believe he exists, of course.
Right.
And the professor said, well, then give me 10 proofs of his existence. Well, the kid wasn't equipped at the time to do it, but eventually he was, and he proved the existence of God, as I did in a book called Questions About God and Answers That Could Change Your Life. Several years ago, I wrote that book with proving scientifically on the quoting scientists, a pretty good science like Einstein, another one, Stephen Hawking, and people like that confess there has to be some intelligence beyond ours. They don't want to call it God. They just say there must be some superior intelligence, something we can't understand. This is Einstein and Hawking talking.
Sure.
And they admit that there can't be the perfection and precision in this and all of creation as we know it, and the cosmos, for that matter, accidentally. It just is scientifically unrealistic that precision comes forth from chaos. So it's scientists that subscribe to that are just on the wrong side of fact. Anyway, I wrote that book, and then this movie confirms it too. So I, of course, was thrilled about it. And then when they asked me, the PureFlix people who are now producing family films that are kind of faith involved and faith-based, but very successful at the box office, asked me to be in the follow-up to God's Not Dead 2, and I play the grandfather of a school teacher who was fired or about to be fired and sued in court because she happened to mention the name Jesus in an answer to an innocent question from a student. Wasn't Martin Luther King quoting Jesus? And she said, yes, he was Reverend Martin Luther King, a minister, yes, and he quoted Jesus on several things, and so did Mahatma Gandhi and others. Well, of course, then one of the students is taping that episode at school in his smartphone, and he goes home, plays it for his militantly atheistic parents, and they then go to the school and demand she be fired, and brouhaha ensues, and it becomes a national case with the ACLU, and Melissa Hart plays the teacher. I play her grandfather, with whom she's living and caring for him, the poor old decrepit guy that I play on a walker. I played 4 sets of singles tennis Friday, so I'm not the decrepit old guy, but I did a good performance of one.
That's true. That's true.
And so she wins eventually the case, or actually God wins the case in court, when people that I know that have written, they were set out, they wrote books, lawyers, to disprove the existence of God, and as they examined the actual evidence, were completely flipped around and said, we have to admit there has to be a God. And so some of those actual authors were in the film being quoted on the case when they were trying to fire the school teacher. So, because she would not deny and not make a pledge, she would never say the name Jesus in a classroom. but that's where we are. I mean, in our society, there are those forces trying to make sure that we don't offend anybody who doesn't believe by saying what we believe.
Yeah, it's a very timely topic. Obviously, there's tons of lawsuits. We've seen florists and several others be sued for how they handle their business. Bakers and T-shirt makers, photographers. Yeah, so definitely very timely. It was a truly great performance and a great film.
And they gave my appearance in the film some credit for the box office success. So now the word is out here in Hollywood among the casting directors. If you want to find somebody to play an 80-year-old who can still remember his lines, get Pat Boone. And so I've now done another one called Cowgirl Story. It's out and on Netflix and so on. I don't know if it's had very good theater distribution yet, but I play another grandfather of a girl played by Blair Madison, I think. Bailey Madison, a young girl actress, and she is a little cowgirl on the outskirts of L.A., and she comes to school wearing boots, and she rides horses, and the other kids make fun of her. But I'm her retired Marine chaplain grandfather, and in the course of the film, which involves a lot of horseback riding amongst the kids who learn to respect her, and I get to recite in a very moving, pivotal moment of the film, the 23rd Psalm.
Oh.
And that's why I took the role, because, sometimes the faith-based films don't pay much because they're operating on a smaller budget, but I didn't do it for the money. I just did it so that on film and in a movie theater I get to quote the 23rd Psalm, and for me, very movingly, and I hope, unlike any other performance or wording of that poem, I mean, I guess the only way to say it is the saying of it that you've ever heard anybody else do. I wanted to say it with great feeling, as if it were David himself who wrote it, saying those words, the 23rd Psalm. Two or three others have been asked to do, but because faith-based films sometimes, unless they have assured distribution, don't always get seen. And so for me to take the time and play a part, learn it, they wanted me to play a fake Santa Claus in one film. And I wasn't sure the story was going to actually get to the theaters, so I didn't do it. And there would have been a faith element. They kept trying to add more to it to get me to play it, but I just felt the whole story was flawed. But, all of that takes me back to another film appearance for which I'm extremely grateful in my life, and that was in the film called The Greatest Story Ever Told, which was an amazingly significant and successful film. George Stevens, The Greatest Story Ever Told, the story of Jesus played. I didn't agree with Max von Sydow, the Danish guy with blue eyes, playing Jesus, although he did a great job. I just didn't think Jesus would look like that or have a slight Danish accent. But still, the film was huge, and George Stevens asked me, of all the actors in Hollywood he could have asked, to play the young man, as one of the translations describes, at the tomb, who says the most important words ever heard in any language: "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here. He is risen, just as he said." I got to say those words in that film, The Greatest Story Ever Told. And for me, that was a highlight of a life. I mean,
that's a pinnacle. Yeah.
To say those words,
Yeah.
So
I'm eager to see this film. This reading of the Psalms 23. That's very dear to my heart. I can't wait.
It's available.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to catch that.
Called Cowgirl Story.
All right.